have emphasized learning is the work because what was happening is that people were taking professional development or courses or workshops. But learning is the work is what happens in between workshops. That's the best way of explaining it. In other words, what happens in the school day after day. And this is the real work of change because it's implementation. And when you focus on that, people learn every day in the culture. They have to with the strategies that we're emphasizing. And what's important about it is they're much more precise because they're doing the work. They're just not studying it at a workshop. So more precise. The group is doing it by definition, whereas a workshop you might have a team. In the day-to-day work, you have everybody, the team plus everybody. So the group is doing it. And when the group is doing it, they develop skills together. They develop commitment together. They develop shared vision. And shared vision is not something that most people start with. They have to create it by doing it. So the most important, that's the nature of learning as the work. It's the hardest because it's easier to go to a workshop than it is to implement a change with your colleagues. So it's much harder, but it's much more powerful, obviously. So the work we've been emphasizing is, yes, it's input from workshops or ideas about what should be focused on, the instructional practices and the link of data to instruction. But the real part of it is to cause it to happen and then for people to learn from it, from each other. So it's the substance. It's what drives it, and it's what's getting us the biggest success. The more you go deeper into student learning with technology, with personalization, and if you just take our standards, level 1 and 2 is not proficient. Level 3, you start to get proficiency, and level 4 is higher order skills like collaboration and thinking and problem solving. The shift as you go deeper into pedagogy, successful pedagogy, say level 3 and 4, the actual shift in the content of the pedagogy has a growing role for students, student evaluation, student voice, use of technology, interaction of students. So it opens up for the students a whole new way of learning from each other and a whole new way of teaching to get that kind of learning to happen. So I'm going to say, if you move up and go deeper into implementation, you do the learning and the work, it's inevitable that the student plays a greater role because that's part of the definition of the success. So again, this has to be happening in the workplace, in the school place, because students now, they don't go to workshops. I mean, sometimes they do, I'm sure, but the students are the everyday work, and the nature of getting it right is for teachers individually, but especially together. Collectively, with good leadership from the principal, support from the outside, from the Literacy Numeracy Secretariat or consultants and coaches and so forth, and then creating a much more engaging participation with students, which then affects their motivation. The students' motivation shows up in their liking school for a change, and it shows up in the results of student achievement. So it's a natural part of this that you can't do learning as the work without increasing the quality and nature of the way that students interact with their learning. It just goes together. In the old days, if you had seemingly control because you were running the classroom and the students had the books to follow and that. And so now you let go in order to have more deep influence. So it's a bit daunting for teachers if they're used to the control, if they're not good at managing the learning environment the way we're talking about. And this is why we put so much emphasis on the capacity to operate in this very different way, with students having, of course, access to information through technology now, that where the teacher used to be the controller of knowledge. That's no longer the case. So it has to be, the teacher has to be the shaper of the learning, pulling out and making sure that it's worthwhile in that kind of interaction. So huge role for the teacher, huge change for the principal in terms of organizing this. But the good news is once you get better at it, the capacity goes up. It's way more satisfying because you have more impact. You're engaged more. So it really has, in many ways, re-energized the profession in those examples that we've seen work. It's amazing, which I now call it recently moral imperative realized. Realized is the actual success. And when you get the success, the energy takes a quantum leap forward because then the teacher knows, this is working, I can't wait to do more of it. Sustainability is coming from two things that are built into the process. The first is that when teachers get energized, the way that I called realization, their energy increases so much with each other that they want to do more. In other words, it's worth it. So it's not as much of a problem. It's hard to sustain something that where you're struggling with it. It's not hard to sustain something if it's working, especially if the group is reinforcing each other. So there's a natural sustainability there. That's one of two conditions. The other thing that sustains is that because it's collaboration, because it's collective capacity building, the junior members of the collaboration, if I can put it that way, are learning to be leaders, and they're the next generation of principals and other kinds of superintendents all the way through. So what you get is a double payoff. You get better impact today because the group is focused, and you get more people putting their energy on it, and then you get the pipeline for sustainability because those leaders are learning leadership before they become formally appointed, because that's collaboration is all about learning how to lead and work with each other. So we're seeing now, I think, I feel much more positive about sustainability than I did before, because when we defined it before, we said, how are people going to keep up this energy to keep going? Well, it turns out that's not the problem. If you have good leaders and you have people that are getting good results, that's energizing enough, and it creates the conditions to keep going. There's a very strong focus on the actual improvement of teaching as it's tied to getting results, all specified to the individual student, and then it kind of adds up, and you get the results through the whole group. So that's inside the school. It's a combination of getting together, applying, and it's just sort of built into the culture of a day-to-day interaction. But it's also the case that outside the school, if you just did this within a school, in isolation, intra-school, let's say, it wouldn't have much staying power. So we have, in our strategies, clusters of schools working together. So they start to stimulate each other, 6, 7 schools, but it's very focused on that. You have at the external coaching and consultant level, either people from the school district and the curriculum and instruction department, teaming up with LNS, our student achievement officers. So they're providing external support to help people get better at this, but also to help the idea spread across schools, across the province, the schools on the move, which is across the whole province, or schools within a district, or across districts within a region. So this is very much dynamic inside the school, fueled externally, where you're contributing to other schools, but you're also learning from other schools. It's a system.